Hello everybody. So today we are going to cover a topic on parenting styles, which has to do with the parenting support group. Let's start. So let's start with emotional literacy. Uh, so emotional well has to do with feelings and emotions. Literacy has to do with something that you are able to do. Like people are able to read. I mean, they learn how to read, right? They learn how to get familiar with words and the meaning, the sentence, grammar, and all those things. Well, emotional literacy has to do more or less, let's say, like kind of the same thing. But in this case, it has to do with emotions. So emotional literacy means that we are able to understand, communicate, deal, and express our feelings in the best possible way. So this helps to cope with issues without getting out of control. For example, someone may get angry, may get upset. That's very normal. But if that person has emotional literacy and has great advanced emotional regulation skills, that person would be able to express anger in the appropriate, healthy way. So it's okay to be angry, though it's not okay to start slamming doors, throwing things, kicking, punching, or being violent, right? So emotional literacy has to do with being able to regulate ourselves, being able to have significant self-control. It's okay to be sad, though it's not okay to allow sadness to become depression, right? It's okay to be anxious. It's okay to be, let's say, scared, though it's not healthy for the individual um, to allow, let's say, fear to become um, panic, right? Something like that. Okay, so let's continue. So we are the result of this triangle. Let's say, um, let's say, we think, we behave, we act, and we also feel. So it has to do with thinking, feeling, and doing, right? Has to do with, let's say, uh, thinking, feeling, and doing. And then acting or behaving, right? And then we have again thinking, feeling, and doing. So it's this triangle show us that we process thoughts, we process a thinking aspect in regard to the perceptions, or that's something that we are exposed to. And as we think and we allow our thinking process to interpret, to show to ourselves and to others, the way we perceive and understand events or situations, obviously there is going to be an effect on our feelings. And from our thinking and feeling, there is going to be another effect of behaving or acting or doing something based on our thinking process and perception. So this information help us right now to consider positive thinking, right? So positive thinking is way much better than negative thinking. That sounds like, obviously, we won't argue about it. Though when we allow our thinking process to be negative, negative thoughts or negative thinking, I would classify three types of negative thinking. Number one has to do with thoughts uh, that focus on negative expectations of the future. Number two has to do with thoughts in regard to negative perceptions in regard to let's say other people, negative thoughts about other people. And the third one has to do with uh, negative thoughts about ourselves. So number one has to do with negative thinking about the present and the future. Number two, negative thoughts about other people. And number three, negative thoughts about ourselves. Now, these three kinds of thoughts, which are negative thoughts, take so much from people, takes so much from you. It absorbs energies from you. So that's why people, when they start thinking negatively about the future, negatively about their present, negatively about other people, negatively about themselves, my goodness, that's going to absorb so much energy from the individual. Therefore, sometimes people experience headaches, um, upset stomach, or what psychologists call psychosomatic symptoms. In other words, people experience physical discomfort, and they go to see the doctor, and the doctors may say, well, there isn't much we can diagnose because we have done the blood tests, the lab with your blood, and everything seems to be normal. So maybe you need to rest. Maybe you need to, just breathe in, breathe out. Don't stress out too much. Medical doctors may say that. That's an example, though I'm not a medical doctor. But I'm just using a very, obvious, simple example. And let's say those are psychosomatic symptoms because we are focusing too much on negative thoughts in regard to the future and the present, negative thoughts about other people, and negative thoughts about ourselves. So therefore, positive thinking is very good. Some people may say, yeah, right, I'm just going to start thinking positively, even though the reality is that I'm going through so much that I think positive thinking is not going to solve anything. Well, they may be right to some degree, but the question is, for how long have you been thinking negatively about the future of the people and yourself without knowing, without being fully conscious? And of course, most people will say, well, I never thought about it, right? I never thought about that. So that's why we need to be very careful when we, allow the mind to start thinking negatively about the future, the present, or the people and ourselves. I don't want to say it's like magical thinking, but it has to do with allowing ourselves to learn a different way of seeing the future, seeing, understanding other people, and seeing and understanding ourselves. This is just a little um, review of something that we have discussed before in regard to positive thinking, positive self-talk, and calming techniques, right? Okay, let's continue. Now, in regard to parenting, this is something that we want to take into consideration seriously because our little ones, our children are little ones. They are little ones. They don't have the same cognitive distortions as we do as adults. They are little ones learning from ourselves, learning from the parents. And we want to be careful what we tell them, especially when they make mistakes, normal mistakes. So we want to make sure that we don't humiliate, that we don't use you statements toward our children. You statements are like, you never, you always, you will never learn, look at you. Those are, negative you statements. We want to use positive I statements, assertive communication, such as, my son, I see you are not doing well in math, so let's review what we can do, okay? So it's okay, you got a C minus or D or F, but let's see what we can do. Let's talk to the teacher to see if they have extra help or something. That's way much better than, look at you, look the grade, what's going on, why are you getting bad grades, what's wrong with you? That would be you statements, aggressive communication. So and then we train to some degree our children how to think about themselves, and we want to be very careful, right? We want to be very careful. So I see you are doing your best, I see you are trying, instead of, well, you say you are trying, but you don't seem to be trying, because look, you are not doing good. Well, that's not good. That's not a good way of talking to our children, right? So we'll be covering more of this in other topics. Now, so discipline. What is discipline? What does discipline mean to you? We know that discipline comes from the word disciples, nothing to do with the gospel of church or religious stuff. But what is discipline? Discipline comes from the word disciple, and disciple means to educate, to show the way, to provide instructions to other people. In this case, when it comes to discipline our children, we are talking about, I'm going to teach my children. I'm going to show them the way. I'm going to be a role model to them, not only telling them, not only giving them instructions, but I'm going to provide examples of how I'm expecting my children to behave. So positive expectations, right? So therefore, discipline has to do with educating, teaching, guiding our children. Has nothing to do with, physical punishment, which becomes sometimes abused. So people may say, well, I'll discipline my child with physical punishment, and that kind of behavior or way of providing discipline to children gets out of control. Some parents may cross the line, such as physically badly punishing their children. I think that's not a good idea. We'll be talking about child physical abuse in other topics, but here I just want to provide this interesting aspect of discipline. So a definition of parenting. So the question is, what is parenting? What does it mean to parent, right? So what would be a definition of parenting? It's probably kind of difficult, because parenting may mean or could be defined differently in other cultures. I mean, what does parenting mean from a Hispanic Latino perspective, and also from a Anglo-white definition or observation, and from an African American, Asian American, and from different, ethnic backgrounds. So therefore, to provide an exact definition of parenting, it's kind of difficult because different cultures may define parenting based on their, cultural growing up experience. But in this case, let's say, parenting is the art of educating our children through the demonstration of living and healthy examples that assist the development of our children. Once again, parenting is the art, is the process, is the way, is the method to provide education, to provide healthy discipline to our children. So parenting is the method to guide our children, to show them the way with, examples, and overall with our, example as parents. So the demonstration of living in the here and now and healthy examples that assist, help support our children's development in the best possible direction. Okay, so let's continue. So now, what is the difference between education and discipline? So what is the difference between education and discipline? So education means to provide guidance, to teach our children with examples. It's not only do as I say, period, but do as I do, my son, follow through based on how you see me doing it. And discipline, education is discipline, means to educate our children, right? So remember, do not confuse discipline with punishment, okay? Because some parents may say, well, I'm going to show some discipline to this child, and they may spank, or they may, use the chancla, or they may use some kind of object, belt or something, to physically punish their children. And they mean, they are providing discipline, teaching their children a lesson. I think that's not a good idea. That becomes abused, and we want to be careful with that, right? So once again, we will be covering one of these topics later on. So now, let us focus on the 4 parenting styles. Darling describes the parenting styles based on Bambrind, 1991, as the main author who developed the theory of the parenting styles. So the question is, how many parenting styles exist? What kind of parent am I? So let's see. So the first one is called indulgent parenting. Indulgent parenting has to do with permissive, non-directive parents. Indulgent parents, also referred to as permissive or non-directive, are more responsive than they are demanding. So they are more responsive than they are demanding. So they are non-traditional and lenient, do not require mature behavior, allow considerable self-regulation, and avoid confrontation. So indulgent parents may be further divided into 2 types: democratic parents, who, though lenient, are more conscientious, engaged, and committed to the child, and non-directed parents. So now, let me give you another example of indulgent parenting. Let's see. So this is according to Santrock. So indulgent parenting is a style of parenting in which parents are highly involved with their children, but place few demands or controls on them. Indulgent parenting is associated with children's social incompetence, especially a lack of self-control. Now, let me give you an example. Let's say Johnny is playing with his toys in the living room, and Johnny has so many toys, and then mom says, "Okay, Johnny, your aunt is coming to visit us this afternoon, so I want you to clean up the living room. Remove all your toys in 10 minutes, okay?" And Johnny, he keeps playing. He says, "Yeah, mommy, yeah," but Johnny keeps playing with his toys, and he brings more toys from his room, because the living room is huge and he's able to have all his toys in the living room. And then mom reminds Johnny, saying, "Johnny, remember your auntie's coming in 5 more minutes." But Johnny says, "Well, I don't want to clean it up. These are many toys, mom. I'm just going to put them aside." And the mom says, No, you need to do it right now." But guess what? Johnny won't clean up. Guess who's going to do it? Guess who's going to clean up the toys? Who's going to pick up the toys? The mom or the father. So that's why this kind of parenting is indulgent, permissive. Sooner or later the mom or the parents or the dad is going to be the one doing the work the child is supposed to do. So that's why this is called indulgent parenting. These are loving and caring parents. These parents don't neglect their children. They love them so much that they overprotect their children. But sadly speaking, these parents are not teaching their children to be socially competent, and they may lack self-control. They may expect in the future other people to do things for them, which is not good, right? So this is the indulgent parent. Let's see the next one. The next one has to do with authoritarian parenting. As you can see, authoritarian, like being authoritarian, highly demanding and directive, but not responsive. This is, let's say, like the military kind of, being a parent. So authoritarian parents are highly demanding and directive, but not responsive. They are obedience. They are obedience and status oriented, and they expect their orders to be obeyed without explanation. Period. So these parents provide well order and structured environments with clearly stated rules. Authoritarian parents can be divided into two types: non-authoritarian directive, who are directive but not intrusive or autocratic in their use of power, and authoritarian directive, who are highly intrusive. In other words, authoritarian parents are demanding. They have serious and high expectations for their children. Period. If they don't do it, if their children do not do what they are expected, you know how dad or mom is going to get mad. So, parents from authoritarian, children from authoritarian parents may follow through and do what they are supposed to do, not necessarily because they know, the assertive expectation, but they may do it because they are afraid if they don't do it. If they don't do it, they know, dad or mom is going to get so mad, so angry that they may even use some kind of, physical punishment. So, let's see. So, authoritarian parenting is a restrictive. You know the word restrictive. There is some kind of limitation. Punitive style in which parents exhort their child to follow their directions and respect work and effort. The authoritarian parent places firm limits and controls on the child and allows little verbal exchange. Authoritarian parenting is associated with children's social incompetence. Why social incompetence? I mean, they grow up learning, discipline. They grow up learning to be responsible. But they may have some difficulties in the future being social competent. Okay? In other words, they will be expecting their surroundings with other people to follow through the expected structure in a way that is supposed to be, period. And if that doesn't happen, they may have some difficulties interacting with people who may not go along with the authoritarian expectation. So, I have read various cases from literature, books, and some examples. And I have heard from some moms, saying, the father is in the military or different branches in the military, right? And they talk about, the fathers being very strict or training their children to start doing some kind of physical activity and exercise at home. I mean, they want to teach their children what they have learned in the military. I mean, it doesn't mean every single person being in the military is going to do the same thing. But, some of these cases I have read and some of these moms I have listened to, they say, these dads cross the line, right? Like, it's too much. He's expecting, the children to obey exactly the way it is. Then they may not allow these little ones to be little ones, right? So they may oppress and kind of force to some degree their children to develop in the way that is not expected yet because they are little ones. So let's see. The authoritarian parenting is with the parent that children don't play around with. So the last word is the parent's word, period. There is no exchange of negotiation. No. Going back to Johnny, who was having the toys in the living room, the father may say, okay, clean up the toys right now, period. And Johnny says, I don't want to. Well, you do it right now. It's not if you don't want to, you need to do it now. That's the expectation. Let's do it now. I mean, that's authoritarian, right? I'm kind of exaggerating, but I just want to give you an example. Okay. And then we have the authoritative parenting style. This one has to do, there is another name, which is democratic parenting style. Nothing to do with Democrats or Republicans. Well, political party, but Democrat parenting has to do with, like democracy, right? They are demanding but responsive. Let's see. Authoritative parents are both demanding and responsive. I mean, it's okay to be demand, right? Like, this is the expectation. This is what I'm expecting you to do, my son. But on the other hand, responsive, like loving, caring, like understanding. They monitor and impart clear standards for their children's conduct. They are assertive, but not intrusive and restrictive. There is open space, open room to negotiate, to listen to each other's opinions and feelings. That's their disciplinary methods are supportive rather than punitive, rather than being authoritarian. They want their children to be assertive as well as socially responsible and self-regulated as well as cooperative. This is a wonderful way of being a parent. Authoritative. Authoritative. Hopefully I'm saying it right. But let's use the other term, democratic parenting, right? So I like the last part that says they want their children to be assertive. Assertive means to be confident, to be sure, to be with great self-esteem, confidence, as well as socially responsible. They are expected to be responsible for their actions, for their, life experience, and self-regulated, self-control. They learn how to control themselves instead of being impulsive and violent and aggressive, as well as cooperative, cooperation, collaboration. Excellent. Now let's go for the next one. Oh, this is another definition. I have two definitions of these parenting styles from different experts in this area. So this one from Santrock seems to be the easiest one to understand. His definitions. So authoritative parenting encourages children to be independent, but it still places limits and controls on their actions, behaviors. Extensive verbal give and take is allowed. See, this is the great thing. Extensive verbal give and take is allowed. So they listen to each other's feedback. And parents are warm and nurturing toward their child. Loving, caring, understanding. Authoritative parenting is associated with children's social competence. Excellent. So now we have the last one, which is called neglectful parenting. So neglectful parenting has to do with low in both responsiveness and demandingness. Let's see. So another word for neglectful parenting has to do with uninvolved parents. Uninvolved parents are low in both responsiveness and demandingness. In extreme cases, this parenting style might encompass, cover both rejecting, neglecting, and neglectful parents. Although most parents of this type fall within the normal range. Let's see the other definition. Neglectful parenting is a style in which the parent is very uninvolved in the child's life. It is associated with children's social incompetence, especially a lack of self-control. Now, let's go back to the example of Johnny. Maybe the parent will say, Johnny, please, you have a mess right here. When are you going to clean up? And the child, Johnny, says, I don't know. Just leave my toys there. So I mean, neglectful means not to pay attention, not to provide, let's say, for the basic significant needs of the child. I mean, there is something, child neglect and versus child severe neglect. So let's say, there isn't, a stable hygiene with the child or at home. The cleanliness of the house is not as well as the way it is supposed to. Um, there could be un cochinero, or or parents may not provide like a safe holding environment for their children. When it comes to CPS, child neglect is the most reported situation with children and parents. So, they may, CPS may come, Child Protective Services, social workers may come because there is a report and they may find out that the parents are not providing for their children's basic needs, such as, nutrition, or medical attention, educational attention, um, and so forth. So, um, as long as, parents provide the basic needs, such as education, uh, food, shelter, medical attention. Um, but the house is a mess. You know, let's say CPS or social workers may not be able to do much about it because they say, well, the parents have the basic needs. I mean, they have the house, kind of not with well hygiene, but if that's the way they want to live, that's their freedom. But let's say, the house has, dogs or cats excrement or urine in the living room, in the carpet, then that would be something else, right? So they will need to provide some kind of support and help for these parents to make sure their house is in good hygiene, because they don't want their children to get sick, right? That's just an example. Okay, let's continue. So let's see physical development. Physical development, this is just a little introduction. We are almost done. Physical development is the continuum process, or the continual process through which children and adults are to meet their physiological needs, such as nutrition, health, and protection, medical attention, shelter, and so forth. We'll be covering this in another presentation. And then emotional development. Emotional development is the importance of helping the child and the adult to experience self-validation and a healthy self-esteem. In addition, it is the art uh, of meeting the person's needs. Let's continue. Once again, these topics we'll cover in another presentation. The main topic today is parenting styles. So social development is the environment in which the child and the adult are exposed to external and internal surroundings, right? It is the ability and learning experience for the person to learn how to interact with others. In part, others play a fundamental impact in leading others to behave. In this case, the parents, right? The parents, the role models to their children. Academic development is the art of teaching your children and others the ability they have to enhance their learning experience. This is important. Read to your infants and children every single day. Do art with your children. Talk and sing together. Visit their school and talk to their teachers in regard to how their children are doing. So encourage and help revise homework and so forth. So academic development, this is fundamental, right? And this precious cat right here, I think I call him Poncho. I mean, he was not my cat at home. but he would visit. He would visit home in the backyard or front yard. Of course, I would give him food. And he was gentle, nice, calm. And suddenly, he disappeared. You know, maybe something happened to him. But we miss Punch. Hello, Punch. Uh-huh. Beautiful cat. Okay, so I think we are almost done. The spiritual development. This is to encourage children and others to develop a spiritual process. Each family has a belief system related to either religion or spirituality principles. Psychology has reported that spirituality and prayer help individuals to improve their healthy lifestyles. In other words, religion does more good than bad. Or nowadays, some people focus more on a spiritual balance, which means, they may not go to church, they may not read the Bible or things like that, right? But they connect with themselves, they connect with Mother Nature, they connect with their higher power in a respectful way, which is okay. So the spiritual balance is also very important. Well, I want to thank for your time and I want to thank for your participation. Here we have the eagle, and the eagle represents love from the east, from the sacred medicine wheel. Sacred medicine wheel. And the eagle also represents vision and mission. The eagle, flies probably flies, the animal that flies the highest, flies all the way to the clouds and able to see from far away. So that is the teaching from the sacred, eagle based on my interpretation. The teaching from this sacred eagle has to do with being able to see things from a different perspective. It's not always the way we see things. We need to see things from a different perspective. When the eagle flies high, he's able to see things from a different perspective. He's able to see things with a more, perspective experience. So whenever we go through life experience and we just focus on the problem, but we don't take our time to distance ourselves from the stressful situation, you take a walk, you go to the mountains, you go to the ocean, you go to the river, you do some kind of breathe in and breathe out. That's the representation of the ego. We need to close our eyes, look inside, and try to modify it or to change that something within ourselves that is not allowing us to see things from a different perspective. That's the teaching from the ego. Okay? In my view. Okay? In my view. So, but it's a wonderful animal. I want to thank you for your time, for your participation. Today we covered the 4 parenting styles. We covered something about education and discipline. We covered something about, child development as an introduction. But the main aspects that we cover were the parenting styles. And also we covered the thinking, feeling, and doing. Remember the triangle? Okay. So thank you for your participation. Hopefully you took notes. You will need your notes to do an interesting form. See you next time. Bye.